Welcome back. This is Dave again with another magazine flick through, and we are looking at a quite old copy of Edge, and it's issue 3 from December 1993. And this is the first time that I've looked at an issue of Edge. It's quite a different magazine than what I've looked at in the past. So I've looked at magazines like Mean Machine, CVG, and really those were for perhaps younger readers, perhaps people my age at the time, whereas this was for slightly older people, and people who really took games seriously. Probably the same people that imported a lot of consoles as well. But this magazine is quite famous for really hyping this very strange generation. It was after the Mega Drive and SNES, but it was before the PlayStation. So a lot of these are mentioned here. You've got the CD32, like Mega CD32, CDI, 3DO, Jaguar, and all of them really fell by the wayside. It wasn't until the PlayStation 1 and Saturn and later the N64 took off that I think that generation, the 32-bit generation, really was established. So it was interesting to read some of these magazines around this era. So the front is Rise of the Robots, and we all know what happened with that. It was a lot of pre-rendered imagery that didn't quite work in a game. I think Donkey Kong Country did a really good job of that. But hey-ho. So what have we got here? So this is virtual reality. Looking at that, I think is that the Sega one? I'm not sure. It's got that red ring around it, so it might be the Sega one, which never came out. So they're talking about CD-ROM, 3D, and this is the big thing. I think it was really the PlayStation 1 that got 3D right, and CD was just a way of storing data rather than it being all about full motion video, which was a bit of a craze at the time and wasn't that successful. So the machine that Edge is talking about here, and you'll see this time again, is the 3DO, which was really hyped by the magazine as being the next best thing. And as soon as the PlayStation was announced, they really changed their mind pretty quick. So we've got an interview with Core Design, who I really liked at the time because I think they did some really good games on the Mega CD and made really good use of the hardware when a lot of developers really didn't. It was probably just the difficulty. So we're looking at the 3DO. This was a machine that I really wanted at the time, and I already had the Jaguar and I had the Mega Drive and CD, and I realised that it would be probably a good idea to just sell it all and buy a 3DO. And I sold the Mega Drive and the Mega CD and all the games, and I didn't realise how much the 3DO cost because it was insanely expensive and I just didn't have enough money for it. So I ended up buying a SNES. So yeah, it was kind of impressive hardware at the time, but I think it was still a bit underpowered. So we've got a sampler CD with looks like a lot of FMV games, and something that looks a bit like an early version of Need for Speed. So number 5, the impressive but too fast for its own good Road Race. Never heard of that one. Maybe that became Need for Speed, I don't know. The picture's a little small. So Star Fox 2 is in progress, so we know this never got released. This was a Super FX 2 game, and by the time it got finished, the N64 was either just around the corner or had been released, and there was a Star Fox game coming out on that, and I think Nintendo just didn't want to confuse the market, so they just pulled it. Whereas 3D was meant to be for this new machine, not something that came out before. But there you go. So these are the pads that are chained together. Yeah, so a lot of things about digital photos, where you could get your photos scanned by Boots and put on a CD. And you could play them. And we've got one cat. Right, one sorted out cat and some muddy paw prints wiped off the magazine. Now, so this was the FMV card that you could get for the PC. So that I suspect there would have been a number of manufacturers making these. So these were really hardware decoders for MPEG-1, so you could play video CDs. Now, I remember at the time we had a 486 DX33, and it was pretty lousy at video decoding. You only had, you know, a really small image. I'm thinking it was 320 by 240, but it might have even been smaller than that, just scaled up. So this was really quite a big deal. I don't recall if any games required them. I'm thinking of games like The Seventh Guest. I don't know if you had to have one of these cards, but it certainly made a big difference. So they're talking with an FMV version of Return to Zork, Dragon's Lair. So maybe there were games that you had to have one of these accelerator cards. Interesting stuff. You can see where the 3D card came from. These were starting to become the norm. So the Jaguar, yeah, so this was on its way. I bought mine the end of '94, so this was a year before that. And there was a lot of hype around it at the time, having 5 CPU or 5 processors. And we didn't really know what these machines were capable of, because if you compare it to a lot of 16-bit games, any kind of 3D was impressive at the time. Even the Super FX chip was okay, but not arcade quality in any way. So there was certainly a lot to play for. And we're looking at games like Cybermorph, Alien vs Predator, Tempest, Checkered Flag. And I think the interesting thing here is that Alien vs Predator wasn't really 3D, it was raycast, just like Doom. And Tempest 2000 was a bit of an oddity in the way that it drew its graphics. I think the Jaguar was good at that, but I think for proper 3D, not so much. Trevor McFern, Crescent Galaxy, yeah, a lot of CG sprites, very much like a tech demo. So we've got another VR demonstration at a show. Yeah, some of these magazines are quite difficult to see what the images are. They're a little bit stylized. Nintendo backs out of CD-ROM. So this is, I probably mentioned before, and I'm sure you know already, that the history was that Nintendo either reacted to Sega or NEC with the PC Engine and were going to develop a CD-ROM based add-on, which never came out. It ended up, originally it was going to be Sony that were collaborating to develop, and then because of some kind of license disagreements, they ended up partnering with Philips, and that's where the license agreement came from, that some Nintendo licenses like Mario and Zelda, a license was extended to the CDI company. So there were some fairly dodgy Nintendo-based games. But when Nintendo cancelled this, Sony got really upset and declared like a vengeance on Nintendo, and decided they were going to beat them at their own game and make a super console, which was the PlayStation. So yeah, I mean, it's talking here about, this is similar to the Jaguar in that it's a good idea to sell a console without a CD-ROM and then hope that people would buy them, but add-ons just don't sell. Don't sell. So yeah, we know what happened to both the Jaguar CD and the Mega CD, and these other add-ons, they didn't sell that well. I think the only one that did was the PC Engine CD. So what have we got in the charts? So Amiga Championship Manager. I mean, these are all fantastic games. Mortal Kombat on the SNES from bottom to top. Yeah, Mario All-Stars was out at that point. I forget that. Super Street Fighter. Oh, no, it's not Super, is it? It's Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Superstar. Yeah, these are great games. Mortal Kombat again. Flashback. Mega CD Night Trap. Really? I suppose it hadn't been out that long in the UK, so I don't think there were many other games. But I thought Sonic CD was out at this point. Because this is December 93. I'm surprised that Sonic CD isn't on that list. But I do remember it being quite late to the shops, because I read the reviews at the time and waited ages. And I saw one copy in a Woolworths, and that's the only copy I ever saw for a long time. But I bought it, so I can't complain. Maybe it got put out too early. But yeah, so Super Famicom, winning post. You can see the games that the Japanese play are very different to what were played in the West. And a lot of these are really good titles, really quite innovative. Mega Drive, that must be Mega Drive and CD because it's got Sylpheed on it. Yeah, Super Shinobi. Yeah. That noises the cat climbing somewhere where she shouldn't. But anyway, PC CD-ROM, that would have been an expensive machine at the time. And standard PC, Dead Tentacle, X-Wing, Wing Commander, Zool. Didn't know that came out on the PC. Most Wanted, Crescent Galaxy. That's Trevor McFur for the Jaguar. Really? That's not a great game. Virtua Racing on the Mega Drive. That was impressive. Forgotten Castle, never heard of it. And Power Slide. That's a rallying game, I think. I forget what that game played like. So Prescreen, what have we got? SimCity 2000. Elite 2, looks like. Is that Alone in the Dark 2? Could be. Oh, they're all labelled there. I should have done that, but that's cheating. Total Eclipse on the 3DO. Yeah, interesting use of 3D. I don't know if this is polygon based or whether it was some kind of ray tracing or voxel based. But I think these games didn't port very well to the PlayStation. But on the 3DO, they were kind of impressive at the time. Kether, this looks like it's all FMV. You see the polygons. It's kind of like Sylpheed, but given the processor on the CDI, it must be FMV, which looks quite crisp, which you can't argue too much with. Secret of Mana. So this is Seiken Densetsu 2 on the Super Famicom, which would be that. Yeah, impressive game. It's quite expensive now. It's quite sought after. But yeah, there was an iOS release. I think games like this and Secret of Mana and Chrono Trigger were really quite defining RPGs. But they've been ported to other platforms now, which is good because they're expensive. So Alone in the Dark 2. Yeah, games like this really paved the way for what became games like Resident Evil, where you've got pre-rendered backgrounds and you've got really simple polygonal 3D graphics, which work. They work well, and even little bits of FMV in the background work quite well. I'm thinking of games like Blade Runner. Frontier Elite 2. Yeah, this is PC Amiga. I've played this on the Amiga and I played it on the CD32, and I don't know, to me, I think the machine wasn't quite powerful enough. If you've got an accelerator, it's nice, but the frame rate's a little low, particularly on the Amiga 1200. So I don't even know if there was an Amiga 500 version. It would have run pretty slow, I would expect. But yeah, I'm sure if you had a really good PC, this would have been a really nice game. And certainly the third game was good, if a little buggy. Macross Scrambled Valkyrie on the Super Famicom. It's quite odd with Edge on which SNES and Mega Drive games they cover, because they're trying to be a little bit forward thinking and looking at these new consoles, but they can't ignore the common staple consoles, the Mega Drive and the SNES, but they can only really cover one or two games. So it's interesting that they choose Japanese imports. So this is a side-scrolling shoot 'em up, which was, well, I'm not sure if it was expensive then to import, but now it's really expensive on eBay. So this is Rebel Assault, which came out PC Mega CD. I think there may have been a 3DO version, I'm not sure. But that was a good example of how to use FMV right-ish. A little bit of interactivity with video playing in the background, which was okay. It says the wealth of film footage makes CD a very tempting medium. The sequel had a lot of live action footage with Darth Vader in it, so it's quite nice to see new footage being filmed in the 90s. Lawnmower Man, PC Mega CD. Now, if you've got this on the Mega CD, it's probably worth quite a lot of money because it was canned. It was pulled, rather, because there was a bit that needs to be flipped, whether it's Japanese, US or European, and it was accidentally set to the US console, so it won't play on a UK machine unless you've got an adapter cartridge. So they were recalled, and I don't think the game was ever put out. There is a demo of this from Mega Power, which is probably a lot easier to get hold of. So I did play this back in the day, and it's all right. It's really just a quick time event with video playing in the background. So quite similar to Rebel Assault, and a little bit grainy. So yeah, SimC 2000, Mac and PC. As this was ported to nearly everything at the time. Was there an Amiga version? Don't recall. But there's a PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, even the SNES got a release of this. Yeah, this is truly a great game. And the ones after this, I don't know, never really quite got my attention in the way this did. Maybe I just had more time when I played this as a teenager. But certainly has stood the test of time. Just like the original did as well. That was a great game. Seawolf, never heard of that one. I have played Subwars 2050. I think I had a demo disc with this on. Really complex. It took me a long time to work out how to get the craft to even start and move. So big ad for Frontier, Elite 2. Yeah, it's nice to see that you've got the PC shots and the Amiga shots, and they look pretty comparable. It's just the frame rate. Pyramid Patrol, Laser Active Mega CD. I may have played this at Replay. I don't think this machine ever came out in the UK or Europe or even the US for that matter. What it was a Laserdisc player, and you had plug-in modules. One was a Mega Drive, one was a PC Engine. So it's not Mega CD, it's Mega LD. Speaking of PC Engine, Super Darius 2 this would be on the CD unit. So I haven't played this. I've played Super Darius, which is the first game. I've got that one on HuCard, but I haven't played this one. So 3DO scene. So that would have been the racing game that the magazine was looking at. So this is Road Race. So maybe this did become Need for Speed, because certainly with a bigger image, it looks a lot closer to it. Yeah, so they're talking about EA with Road Rash. So yeah, I think these two games were developed side by side. The graphic effect is quite similar on them. I mean, Need for Speed and Road Rash were both EA, so they were either the same team or a team just down the corridor. So yeah, some golf games and Mega Race. Some anime on VHS. So yeah, interesting that some anime never came out on DVD, so keep your VHS players. So you get an Acorn 3010, not a machine I'm particularly familiar with. But it's interesting, it says David Braben's new project is on page 26, which is Elite 2, coded the first commercial game for the Acorn's 32-bit machine. The Archimedes. Oh, that's that sort of. It's like an isometric 3D game. I forget the name of it. Is it Virus? Or am I thinking of another one? But yeah, I know what that game is. So a lot of release dates. Yeah, interesting that they cover PC Engine and Neo Geo. I'm not sure if the Neo Geo ever got released in Europe. I think it was quite hard to get hold of anyway, but certainly you wouldn't have got that in a standard game shop. PC Engine, so these are all imports. Yeah, magazine issues coming out from Future Publishing. Rise of the Robots. Yeah, these look really nice on magazines. Perhaps a little bit pixelated, but these are all pre-rendered graphics. And these look really nice. And I think, FMV has its place, that it's used even now, but don't mix it up with the gameplay. Yeah, that looks better than the game. I mean, look at the shadows on it. I still think that's pre-rendered. I don't think it's composited like it would do in a game with just sprites and backgrounds. Don't know with that one. Yeah, here we go. The shadow effect is impressive, but unfortunately it may have to be lost in the final version due to memory restrictions. So it's got 100 frames of animation. This is probably on a Silicon Graphics machine, and then they have to make a game from it. Wow, this is a lot of coverage for a game. Yeah. So your 486DX2, that's what we had. No, we didn't. That's a DX2. So that would have been the 66 megahertz machine, which would have run Doom really, really well, and even had a good go at Quake. Yeah. VR, that's the Sega one, I think. Yeah, this never really went anywhere. I mean, that is clearly not rendered on a Mega Drive. Yeah, virtuality machines. I played one of those there was one at Replay, and I think the first time I saw that was Revival at Wolverhampton. So yeah, never really took off, and it's only now with the Oculus Rift that it's really set to arrive in the home. Hopefully it will. Hopefully it will. I'm not sure if the final release is out yet, but you can get dev kit versions. Yeah, all pre-rendered. I mean, those look like really PlayStation 2 quality graphics. So, Super Street Fighter 2. Yeah. Interesting that the magazine, kind of I suppose the advertising style is starting to change at this era. It's starting to become perhaps a bit more pretentious. Game Over. Yeah, games have been around 20 years, but they've been stuck in a rut since the 80s. Is it the death? No, it's the change. And I think we needed machines like the 3DO and the Jaguar and the CDI, Mega CD, and all these experiments to work out what was going to happen next. And clearly 3D, smooth 3D, was going to be possible. And I think the arcades really dictated where we went for the next generation. And I think even a lot of Amiga and PC games with that bit more horsepower worked really well, and the Amiga never really went anywhere after this because Commodore went out of business in '94, but certainly the PC carried it on and the PlayStation did, and I think a lot of Amiga developers jumped ship to the PlayStation. So it wasn't all just arcade games. So yeah, platforms, they kind of died off. There were a few good ones, and I think you get games like Spyro that worked really well, and Mario 64. Shoot 'em ups kept going. Beat 'em ups kind of did, but a lot of them stayed 2D. A lot of the CPS2 games from Capcom, a lot of the X-Men and Marvel superheroes and Marvel vs. Capcom, they all stayed 2D, and I think the Saturn was a great machine for that. So you've got adventures. Funnily enough, that looks a little bit like Minecraft, just with the pixel artwork style. Yeah, adventure games kept going. Driving games, definitely. Flight sims, yes. Strategy, can't think of many, but there were some on the PlayStation. Sports. So yeah, I mean these game styles never went away. What's this? Supergun. Oh, the Supergun is it's a JAMA compatible interface, so you can plug it into your telly, plug arcade boards in. Yeah, so you can play Rygar, Shinobi, what's that? Xenex, I don't know what that is. Strike Force. Yeah, so you probably need a decent monitor as well, it seems. Yeah, I think this is where the Neo Geo was really good. I'm just looking at that now. The Neo Geo is handy because you don't have to keep rebuying the hardware, you just have to buy really expensive cartridges. Okay, so the reviewing games now. So what have we got? Crash and Burn, Super Empire Strikes Back, SNES game. June, Mega CE, Return to Zork, Splatterhouse, FM Towns Marty. Crash and Burn. Yeah, this was impressive on the 3DO because it was proper 3D and the draw distance was pretty good and the frame rate was okay-ish. But I seem to recall playing this, the camera never rotates, so I think it's probably using a lot of tricks to keep the frame rate up, probably making a lot of assumptions about the matrix calculations on the geometry, because I suspect that's all done on the CPU. So 8 out of 10. Yeah. It's okay as a launch game. I think this even got bundled in the UK. You can see there, like the draw distance all around the corners is pretty impressive. Crystal Dynamics, they later made the Tomb Raider games. Not the early ones, but they were core design. It was the later ones. Star Trek 25th Anniversary, that's good, and the sequel. Super Empire Strikes Back. My eye was drawn to the Mode 7. I think the Mode 7 effects on this game and there as well were really impressive. All three games were. I think they got even better as they went on, but you're still restricted by the hardware. Yeah, this is just all around a really great game. Really hard, but I think they even got harder and harder as they went on. But the games really are quite rewarding and you can go back to them again and again. They're not terribly expensive to pick up now. So this is June. Never played this on the Mega CD, but I've played the PC version. And it's really a point and click adventure with a little bit of FMV in there and a lot of still images really. I'm not even sure whether the FMV on the version I played was proper FMV or whether it was just animation. Just cleverly using images. I forget, but given that it's Mega CD, I suspect it probably does have some FMV in there. Yeah, it's a good game. It's quite tricky. You can get stuck in it, but it's the plot's quite engaging. So yeah, this is the Amiga CD32. So they're saying that Sega's Mega CD is just a baby, and this is the mother. This is the machine you want to have, which is really just an Amiga 1200 with a CD drive. And the colour depth is pretty good. The CPU's, it's a 68020, which is not that different than the Mega Drive's 68K 68000. It's just twice as fast. And it's got a video CD add-on. Yeah, I mean I've got one of these, and there's nothing on it that was really better than the Amiga 1200 really. So I don't think it was worth the money at the time. I think it was a little bit too late. So Return to Zork, another FMV game. I think it's looks like point and click. It's first person, isn't it? Adventure game. Yeah, Zork was originally a text-based game on the 8-bit machines. Splatterhouse. This seems quite late because Splatterhouse 2 was out on the Mega Drive, and I think the third game was either out or just about to come out. So yeah, FM Towns Marty was internally, it had a 386 CPU and some custom hardware, and it was meant to be, if I get this right, I think it was the first console that had an inbuilt CD-ROM, because certainly the PC Engine had a CD before this, but it wasn't an all-in-one unit. This was the first 32-bit machine, at least, that had one of these CD drives. Yeah, very odd that it's the first game and not any of the sequels, but it got 5 out of 10, so it's not really worth your 90 quid. So, Future Entertainment Show. Did anyone go there? FIFA. Yeah, so a good old Mega Drive game. And yeah, this is the first of a really long running series and perhaps one of the most successful game series ever. It comes, I suppose, after PGA had been out a few years, and I think it was just a game from EA that really captured people's imaginations, and you know, they kept innovating year on year and people kept buying the game. Yeah, this one came out in a lot of formats. It was a Mega CD, SNES version, Amiga version, and gradually the number of formats went down until the PlayStation and Saturn came around. There was even a 3DO version, which was all in 3D, which I think is what the PlayStation version was based on the year after. TFX PC game. Yeah, really nice 3D simulation for military aircraft, isn't it? Yeah. Don't know if you get to shoot anything. Rastan Saga. Yeah. PCB. Oh, Taito. Yeah, this reminds me of. I said it before. I'm sure I accidentally said Ristar. It's not. It's oh, what's it called now? I've got it on the links. I forget what it's called now. Rygar. I wonder if it's a sequel to that. It looks like it. Doesn't say. Yeah, it looks a little bit dated, considering this is 93 and it's an arcade game. It's very. It looks like it was made in the late 80s. Yeah, so some of you may be thinking, why with 32-bit machines do we really want to be playing some ancient arcade game? So yeah, I don't know how good that game is. I should have a look. Yeah, so this is Core Design, and they're talking about the games they're making. Eventually they would go on to do Tomb Raider and become really successful. But it's interesting they're talking about Thunderhawk that they've made, the CPU. So as programmers, is the Mega CD really as awful as it appears? So the Mega CD has got its own 68K, which is faster than the Mega Drive's one, but you've got the Mega Drive one as well. I didn't realise you could use both at the same time. Yeah, so you got two processors. Yeah, 7 megahertz and 12.5. Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. So they're using one of the CPUs as a graphics chip. That's how it got the 3D effect. So I don't know if it had any hardware for things like Mode 7 and sprite scaling, or whether it was all done in software. I don't know. Yeah. These guys were from Derby, if I remember correctly. Yeah, the 32-bit Sega. Now, are they talking about the Mars, which became the 32X, or are they talking about the Saturn? Yeah. Yeah. Looking at the price, I think this is talking about the Saturn. I'm sure they signed non-disclosure agreements with Sega, so they couldn't talk too much about it. But yeah, certainly Core, I suspect, was starting Tomb Raider for the Saturn at that point, because it was originally a Saturn game. Yeah, so letters, Jaguar, C32, what to buy. Save your pennies, I'd say, for the moment. Yeah. Just how fast do these polygons shift? Really fast, but with not so great a frame rate. But for the Mega Drive, it's impressive. Yeah. What's that? Is that a concept design for the what was then called the PlayStation, the not N64, SNES add-on, or is it an N64? Hard to say. But Total was a SNES or a Nintendo magazine. Yeah. And that's it. More pre-rendered imagery with what looks like some light bloom and a bit of heat haze. So yeah, kind of impressive. But it wouldn't be until the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 until we had that real time. So yeah, so this was Edge issue 3. Interesting to see what's happening. So the next few issues that I've got, I'm trying to do these in chronological order. From here on, I've got a few more issues of Edge and some Mean Machines, and it'll mix around a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how different magazines are prioritising different games and what they see as the future. Because I think at this point, no one really knew. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Hopefully you've enjoyed a slight change to the magazine that I'm looking at, and more coming out next week and every week until the end, I think. So thanks for watching.